You're listening to The Affiliates, a podcast that features stories of entrepreneurs and young leaders who are changing the world for better every single day. My name is Alok Rathore, and I'm a film producer best known for projects such as Choice and The Doorbell. I'm sitting down with leaders to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact. In this episode, Rich talks about how his education became a catalyst to his mission, using storytelling as a tool for branding, and how collective effort can transform human lives. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thanks.
Great. So, what's your story?
So I've got a bit of an interesting story. I grew up in upstate New York, sort of in the middle of nowhere. And I have a younger brother. His name's Terry. And the story gets a little interesting in that Terry was diagnosed with a rare genetic and fatal condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Now, for those of you that don't know what Duchenne muscular dystrophy is, it's a progressively fatal disease where an individual's muscles, due to the lack of the gene dystrophin, fail to work correctly. And so what you'll see, and this disease impacts 99.9% of the cases are boys and young men. And so what you'll see is a phenotypic progression of an inability to walk as the muscle breaks down. These boys around the age of 9 to 12 are put in wheelchairs. And then after that, as the muscle continue to break down, the boys are equipped with ventilators, and most of the boys pass away between sometime in the mid-20s. And so my brother was diagnosed with this condition. And so we grew up together. And as a kid, you don't really recognize this sort of thing. But as I grew older and grew up, it became very obvious to me that my brother was having a great deal of difficulty. And so when I went to school, my undergrad at Cornell, I studied business and then returned to be home close to my brother and worked at a company called Corning, a glass maker, and I did new business development there. And then I really decided that, I wanted to help end Duchenne in some way. And so I applied to and got into Harvard Business School. I attended there and just graduated in May of 2018. And during my time there, I launched both a foundation as well as a biotechnology company with one mission. And that mission was to end Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And so my foundation, Terry's Foundation for Muscular Dystrophy, raises money to support early stage research. We've got very interesting work going on there. And the for-profit biotech company is looking at IP to adopt and develop into a commercial asset to help these boys and these young men suffering from this disease.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And I saw your story that was profiled by Harvard Business School, and I was just really moved by what I saw, and I sort of relate to it in a sense that while growing up, although none of my family members have had such a condition or any other fatal disease, but while growing up, one of my best friends had this problem. And as you said, when you're growing up, when you are doing everything together, at first you don't realize that there's a problem, but as time progresses, you come to know that, okay, something's wrong, because my friend went from playing cricket with me to being on wheelchair just 6 to 8 months, I think. And I couldn't figure out that, okay, this guy was all fit and fine 6 months back, and now suddenly he's on wheelchair and he couldn't walk. So I was first made aware of this condition. Like back then in India, there was no awareness or any solution to these kind of problems. But now, there are ways to make this condition a bit easier for people with the advancement in technology. But I think back then it was really difficult to see a friend go through this, and because the parents couldn't understand or the doctors were not good enough, they essentially couldn't do anything about it. And it was just a very difficult time for family and everyone around them. But it's great that you took this initiative and you are doing everything that you can to, like, end this condition, and that's amazing. That's why you're an inspiration.
Thank you, thank you. No, but you're definitely right in the sense that if you're diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy today, it is a death sentence. There is nothing that will help end the disease for most of these boys. Right now, if you go to a leading clinician, you'll be diagnosed corticosteroids to help preserve the muscle. But essentially, that's what we can do today is we can preserve function. Right now, we can't restore function. Right now, we can't stop the progression of the disease. And what's interesting about muscular dystrophy is that it progresses, especially Duchenne muscular dystrophy, is that it progresses so differently depending on the individual. An individual, and now just for a quick context, the causal gene that I mentioned, dystrophin, is made up of 79 building blocks along with promoters. And an individual with Duchenne means that one of those or multiple of those building blocks have been impacted in some way or form. And so an individual with the same mutation, as they call it clinically, can have a very different outcome. One individual can walk until they're 18 or 19, but then the same individual an individual with the same mutation, can lose the ability to walk much sooner, depending on all sorts of factors. But a lot of those factors aren't quite known yet. Although dystrophin is malfunctioning in an individual with Duchenne, there are other genes and other functions that come to assist the lack of that dystrophin in some cases, not all, but it's quite a variable disease for sure.
How did your education play a role in helping you develop a career?
Without a doubt, Harvard Business School and attending that for my MBA has been a completely transformational experience. Entering into the program, I lacked the tools and knowledge to know how to go about constructing an organization or a vehicle in this sense that could affect change. How do you recruit people? How do you convince people to join you in this mission? How do you talk about your mission to different audiences? How do you find the right intellectual property to commercialize into something that could help kids and young men with this disease? All of these, including the network, were unbeknownst to me before attending HBS. And it was really a transformational, as I said, 2 years that allowed me to develop both a strong network of individuals who were well connected, especially in the Boston biotechnology community, which is where I am, but more broadly into the pharma and biotech community as a whole. Coming from my background wasn't pharma, my background wasn't biotechnology or nonprofits. I worked between business school and undergrad at Corning, which is a specialty materials company. And so those 2 years were amazingly transformational. And moreover, after graduating, Harvard has a program called the Blavatnik Fellowship. And the Blavatnik Fellowship is essentially an extension of a platform that HBS gives you to operate to commercialize science. And it's quite broad. You can be interested in oncology or neuromuscular diseases or pulmonary disease. It doesn't matter. Med device, med tech, it doesn't matter. You really have to be motivated and passionate to change something in the life sciences realm. And so this program that I'm working off of now, actually, for the next year is allowing me to connect to the right individuals, be mentored by some of the leading biotechnology experts in the world, and has really been an amazing accelerator to push this forward. Without it, I certainly would be much less progressed compared to now.
And I think I have had a similar Harvard experience as well. Last year, I took a course called Judgment and Decision Making at Harvard Law. It was by Professor Bruce Hay, and he's probably one of the most famous professors at Harvard Law. But I had no idea when I took that course, but that he's such a popular person. But then once I got to talking with other LLM graduates and the current class back then, they all said that, oh, hey, you have learned under Mr. Bruce. Hey, that's amazing. He's great and everything.
Wow.
But the point being that, it really opened up my mind in terms of how to make good effective decisions, and how can
Right. Right.
it effectively. And being an entrepreneur for me, that was really important, because before I took that course, I had no idea how to approach, let's say, investors or other stakeholders, and
Right.
to make an argument for why they should support you on your journey. And once I understood these nuances of what goes into negotiation and decision making process, that's when I realized that, okay, I was playing a very different game, and that's why I didn't have any success so far. But once I understood these connections between negotiation and business and the stakeholders, that's when I really understood the the complete picture, and that has really helped me to grow my business to this point. And I even sort of surprised myself that I was able to build a company in an industry that I don't traditionally come from in just 18 months. And I'm really thankful that, I took that course and numerous other courses as well. But then that course particularly stood out for me because it really opened up my mind to all the possibilities that are out there. And I think Harvard is good at providing that environment and that mentorship and those peers who really push you to achieve your best.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would certainly attest to that as well. That education is certainly, in from that perspective, important to really refine and understand yourself, and that and being at Harvard, of course, is a transformational experience. So, what's your process of developing a great brand?
Well, I don't know that I have a great brand through yet developed, but I can tell you that we've and continue to put in effort to strengthen the brand of the foundation at least. Myself personally, I've spent a lot of time networking and talking with individuals who have both had great successes, also those individuals who have seen multiple approaches work and not work. And so I've tried to develop the perspective and make up for time, actually, in that sense, so that we can move forward and develop both the foundation as well as Myos, the company, effectively. And so, when thinking about branding Terra's foundation, we put a lot of thought into, and I've had a great conversation with other individuals about this, but providing strong content, whether that's in the form of social media and posting articles or recent findings from pharma and biotech companies developing great Duchenne therapeutics, or in the sense of hosting conferences. For instance, in this past June, we had a educational conference in Waltham where we invited the leading biotechnology companies, most of which were in Boston, some of which were from California, the leading academics, the leading clinicians, to talk with families and really to give them the download on what's going on therapeutically. Where are we with some of these approaches? What can you do clinically to buy yourself as much time as possible? And what's on the cusp of development? What's being developed in academia today that will be able to help us and these families 5-10 years down the road. Even if one therapeutic is commercialized, in the case of Sarepta Therapeutics with Exondys 51, it takes more than that. I think just as in the case of Vertex Pharmaceutical, that it's a cocktail approach that'll really win this day at the end. And so that's certainly a message that we've stressed through the foundation and through that conference that I've mentioned. But circling back to your original question, I think I am by no means am I a branding expert, but what we've done is tried to provide people with useful tools in a digestible manner. Bridging science and the rest of the world is an interesting task, because the language that scientists and researchers speak is certainly a different language than a layperson speaks. But it's crucial that bridge is gapped, that families know what is their child or son amenable to, and in terms that they can understand. Enrolling in a clinical trial is not a trivial process, and it's not one to be done without great amount of thought. And so it's important for families and people impacted to understand what's going on, to be able to comprehend and digest it. And so that's another aspect the foundation's worked on, is making science translatable
Yeah.
to people, to people interested.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, that, creating content and just putting it out there so that, your customers or the people who are just interested in this area can understand what you're up to and what you're doing. Because I feel these days storytelling is really important, and you can do it through, the conferences, as you mentioned, or through putting out content, or, there are so many other ways. But people downplay the importance of storytelling in modern businesses, and I feel it's so important to share that perspective with the people that surround you, be it your friends or family or customers or potential customers. And that really puts forth, the process behind what goes into, doing what you are doing. And I think I heard this really interesting thing that one of the entrepreneurs said, and essentially was saying that, every company should think of themselves as a media company, so that, people not only are investing in you or your product or your brand, but they also understand what it took you to, reach this point. And that could be the difference maker between, you and any other generic brand, let's say. Because I'm in the business of storytelling, as in, I have a film production company, and we make films and documentaries and podcasts. But beyond that, as a person, maybe, even for developing a personal brand, people are interested in understanding the different perspectives, and if you are able to give them that, then it really does wonders for your personal brand as well as your business brand. And I think,
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, hopefully. I mean, I certainly want people to be well informed, to be educated about this, and doing what they can to fight back. It's certainly not something that's going to be accomplished by any one group or one individual. And so trying to gather the mass of motivated and passionate people to affect a positive change is something that is not only inspirational but also necessary. One of our most promising projects that we have going on now in the foundation, and by project I mean we have multiple collaborations with different research universities, mostly in the Northeast. And so one of these most promising projects we've got going on now is personalized medicine, and saying, can we understand your mutation down to the base pair by doing genomic sequencing and RNA-seq through muscle biopsy, to understand what treatment you could be amenable to. And not only what treatment could you be amenable to, but taking something that exists and retrofitting it so that we can enable, in Duchenne's case, a bridge or an improvement in function based off of this on a personalized basis. So that's a tough message to get across, right? It's low. What are you trying to do? And so when you're talking with somebody who may not be as well informed or knowledgeable about the topic, it's certainly one thing that we try to do is try to tell a strong story around it to let people know what you're doing. A lot of this stuff that's going on is really groundbreaking, is really potentially transformational if it works. So, we certainly don't want to get lost in translation.
how has the people around you, specifically your friends and family, inspired you?
I mean, this is I think this is a great question. I mean, my full inspiration, comes from my brother. And having him being afflicted with this disease is something that both me and my family have lived with, as well as my brother for 23 years now. And before that, my mother unfortunately also had three brothers who were affected by this disease,
Mm.
and so you know it's quite difficult. But having him there, as a motivational factor to say, no, we're not just going to lie down and let this disease do as it normally does. We're going to change this. We will find something that works effectively. Is a really good motivator. You wake up in the morning thinking about it, and you go to sleep at night thinking about it. And oftentimes in the middle you dream about it. So it really becomes all consuming and ingrained within your DNA, for lack of a better term, that if you don't win here, there are real costs to pay. It's not like you go home at 5 and come back the next day at 9 and start your work over. It's the disease doesn't wait. The disease doesn't stop. The disease will keep going regardless of weekends, holidays, and everything in between. And so you and anybody working on this has to follow suit. And it's an amazing group of people working on this. It's one of the most dedicated groups across the board, I would say. And so I think the folks, the researchers, the business and commercial people, and the academics and the advocacy folks, really speak loud and clear across the board that they are fully motivated to end Duchenne. And I'm glad to be a part of that. I would rather not be, to be honest with you. I would rather my brother not have been affected by this, but since we can't change that, we'll have to change the outcome in that case.
You know, I certainly identify with that because um, I'm really close to my grandparents, and my grandfather unfortunately passed away almost
Mm-hmm.
back in 2008. But had he was going through something that's called brain paralysis, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially his, as the time progresses, his brain then stops to function properly, and then as it progresses, your motor functions don't work properly, and after a point it just was so difficult to see him just say random stuff and not really
Right.
sure what's, is it a day, is it a night, or had he has he eaten food or not, and he would it was just difficult to see him go through that. And I was very young back then, so I felt uh, pretty helpless in that situation, that okay, there's nothing I'm able to do, and it sucks to be in that situation. And then I felt that okay, going ahead, maybe people will come up with solutions, so other members of my family might not get affected by these, or I just hope that there's some solution out there that uh, nobody else has to go through this. And that's one thing. And but recently, I think 2 days back, my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, and she
One.
has a tumor, and that's spreading to her big intestine. So, but because she's really old, she's 78. It's very risky to do a surgery at this point. And again, as you said, sometimes, you wake up with this thought, you go to bed with this thought, and sometimes you dream of it. And that's essentially what last night has been for me, because my dad said that, okay, um, we are trying the best we can, but it has progressed to a point where it's really difficult to do a surgery, and without
Yeah.
surgery, she probably has like 6 months to survive. But then the point being that okay, because I'm close to my grandparents and I've seen them go through this, I understand how challenging it must have been for you and your family to live with this thing. And I certainly identify that. And that's the reason, like, I try to support people who are doing great things like you, so that we can further the research and development on these conditions, so that other people in future don't have to go through this. So if there's anything I can do to help you with your foundation, then, like, please let me know. I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. But essentially, yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to see someone that you really love go through these situations. But you can't, as you said, you can't change. If you can't change that, then you should change the outcome. And while I'm not, like, a medical expert or anything, but then I try to contribute from my end in whatever way I can, as much as possible, so, like, other people can have better lives.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. It's from a Duchenne perspective, I hope that within the next 10, 15 years we can treat this disease as a diabetes, as something that's a manageable chronic condition that people don't die from,
Yeah.
that it's not a death sentence. And that's not to say that people don't die from diabetes, but to say that there are measures out there and there are treatments available that can help fight back against the disease. And so that a disease that's currently 100% fatal becomes one that doesn't have to be 100% fatal. And that's really the goal at the end of the day. I mean, I think you said it well, that to see a loved one suffer is a painful process. And to the parents and the brothers and fathers and grandparents out there that have seen a loved one go through even not only Duchenne but other diseases, it's a terrible thing. But it's not without hope. There's a lot of good work going on there, and there's a lot of promise. It just takes time, effort, and money.
How would you say is your leadership style different than others?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how it's different. I mean, I think one thing that I strive to do, and by all means, these organizations, the foundation, the biotech, they're not, and it's not just me. There's a lot of good people behind this, a lot of good people advising, a lot of good people helping out in ways that they can. To make this happen, behind every great leader is an army of people who work tirelessly to affect change. And I hope that these organizations both become emblematic of that. But in my perspective, leading with passion and energy, and motivating people to follow you when you're doing something that's never been done before. You're trying to fight death. It's not an easy task, and unfortunately, the way biology is, it's very difficult. And I think man's understanding of itself from a biological point of view is early. But I think that leading with passion and leading with energy, and helping people understand the vision of where you hope to go, really, really gets people to align around you. And it'd be amazing I'm completely surprised that some of the people who have been amazing help to this process. I've had the chance to meet people I never would have met otherwise, and interact with people and organizations I never would have dreamed of interacting with. And so from that point of view, um, I think that's one of my biggest takeaways. But being a passionate and motivated and tireless leader, I think is necessary in these types of businesses. But it's not just one person. It's by all means an army of people, from the smallest, let me connect you to this person, to let me do something and consult for you. It all matters at the end of the day, and it's all necessary. So
Yeah, and I think I agree with your point that behind a successful leader, there is an army of people who are constantly supporting that leader. And it might seem a bit, like, daunting or overwhelming, that you are trying to challenge death and trying to find a solution for something that's a human condition. And that could certainly be, you know, a thing that could break your morale and your spirit from time to time. But if you have people around you who are really supportive, then the process, the journey becomes much easier. These
Absolutely.
thoughts when I was starting my film production company, because my background is in finance. I mean, like, I studied finance, and I used to work with JP Morgan, and I used to handle finance for my family business and everything. But I think when I thought of film production, I had no idea if I'll be good or bad at it, because I don't have any exposure to that industry. But fortunately, through, like, mentorship and learning on sets, and, like, just being open to ideas and absorbing as much as you can, really helped me to reach at this point where I can consistently produce and direct films. But I was also pretty surprised when I launched the crowdfunding campaign for my film, and people just, like, and if you are as you said, if you are a passionate, motivated, and tireless leader, then people will see that. And there have been so many instances where, like, a friend of mine actually recently donated a portion of her book sales to my crowdfunding campaign. And
Wow.
I was really moved by that, because I have never met her in person. We have hardly ever spoken, if ever. And just to, like, have someone make such a big decision, and it's her first book. I mean, like, that's your, whatever you earn from your first book is like your trophy. Like, you want to hold on to every penny of it. But
Right.
just to have a heart that says that, okay, I'll go out and contribute a percentage of my book sales to this guy's film, that itself was, like, such a big motivation for me. And it would surprise you in so many ways that, randomly I would just, like, receive a donation from someone, again, like, who I have never met in my life. Like, we just have, let's say, some common Harvard connection, or like some common, like, connection through colleagues or my previous work experience. And they would decide to, like, put in a certain amount and say that, okay, you're working really hard, I can see that. Here's, like, an X amount of dollars, go and make your film. And you would just completely not expect that. And to see things like this happen really makes me believe that, a team is only a leader is only as strong as its team members. So if you have, like, strong people around you supporting you, then I think, like, nothing is impossible.
Right. Right. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think it's well said that, it takes a village.
What kind of impact would you like to see your work have on people?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear as to what our goal is. To kind of summarize it up into a sentence or two, we're out to end Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Through the foundation supporting early stage and highly promising research to the commercial entity licensing and then developing these assets into treatments for patients. At the end of the day, 5, 10 years from now, I'd love to be able to say that, we contributed to ending this disease, and that we saved the people that needed to be saved for this disease. For us, we're just at the beginning, right? We started the foundation about a year ago. We've raised now almost over $100,000 to put towards early stage research, and the company, the for profit, is in the middle of looking at interesting IP to license and develop. So I'd love for the future to hold an answer to this disease. And there's no clear path, right? There's no, you do this, and then that. It's certainly a vague and unclear path, but I think anything worth doing is challenging, and this is certainly one of the most challenging diseases in the world, I would say.
Yeah.
So I'd love for, love to say that we help to end this disease.
Yeah, and that's such a noble cause to be attached with. And I would urge all my listeners to, like, check out Richard's website. I'll put all of that details in description, and support in any way you can, because it's really important that all of us come together and support, show our support towards this condition. And it's vital that at least you read the story, or the idea behind it, if nothing at all. And I guess that in itself would make a lot of difference going ahead to this cause. But I think you also answered my next question, which is what's next and what's happening. uh,
Yeah, happy to give a little bit more tactical answer to that, if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Go ahead. So what's next? What are any further exciting developments that's in pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I could go on for hours talking about what's next, but most of what's next is how can I say this? Broken down into one of two buckets, right? There's the foundation bucket, and Terry's foundation is, we've currently got a GoFundMe that's up and running, and we're hoping to get traction off of that to push some of this personalized medicine through. And the idea of the personalized medicine is that we'll start with one patient, and we'll say, okay, we'll sequence your genome, we'll conduct the muscle biopsy to understand what's going to be most efficacious, and then we'll build it. We've got multiple shots on goal there. We are working with a group out of Yale to do some very interesting and fresh off the press technology. And we're also working with groups at Boston Children's and the University of Massachusetts to design therapeutics on a personalized basis that could really affect change. And I think the hardest part for us is going from 0 to 1, raising enough capital to get us from 0 to 1. But once we're at 1, once we've proven the concept, I think the sky's the limit. And the mutation types, the idea is that we could tackle most, if not all, of these mutation types if this technology works. And this technology, it's not decades off, right? It's retrofitting and customizing technology that exists today. And there's precedent for this. There's precedent for this in Batten's disease. There's precedent for this in cancer. And so, if this works, it'll change the paradigm of how Duchenne is treated and how Duchenne is looked at. And that's what we're trying to raise the money for through both GoFundMe as well as our annual gala, which this year will be here in Boston as was last year, on October 19th. And then once we've proven that, we'll take it as far as we can and try and get it as many people as we can. And secondly, the biotech company, what's next for that? It'll continue to vet research and eventually adopt one aspect of it to develop commercially. And the idea is that if the foundation can connect to the biotech, it makes it much more interesting and much more efficacious and streamlined to getting this done. So, in the next 12 months, I hope and expect a lot to change. I hope and expect that we'll have raised the capital that we need, and that we'll have the proof of concept data in hand to move forward, and that we'll be moving quicker and as quick as we can to end this disease.
And these are certainly exciting possibilities, and I am looking forward to following your journey to see that, okay, what solutions or potential solutions, or what kind of ideas emerge out of your work, because I attended the Harvard Healthcare Conference last year, and
Mm-hmm.
that just surprised me to the possibilities that are out there. But as you said, it takes time, effort, and money to really discover those solutions. But I am certainly looking forward to all the amazing thing that you look forward that you will do in another year. And if of course, I'll try to lend you support in any way I can. And I just hope that you find a lot of strength in this journey going ahead. And wish you all the luck for your future endeavors.
I appreciate that. I thank you for the time and the opportunity to come on here and speak. It goes a long way, and I wish you the best of success as well. I think what you're doing with this media and these podcasts is really interesting and really amazing, and the breadth and depth of speakers that you've had and will have are hopefully what is interesting your audience, and I think you'll do quite well.
You've been listening to The Afflatus. If you like what you have heard, do us a favor and share the episode with your network on social media. It helps. If you would like to know more about the show or share your opinion on the episodes, connect with us on facebook.com/unciafilms. That's facebook.com/unciafilms. If you would like to support the crowdfunding campaign of my latest film, The Doorbell, then click on the link mentioned in the description. Even a single dollar helps. Thank you so much for listening to The Afflatus.